So what would a healthy insulin-resistant lunch look like? Let me show you. If you have insulin resistance, it is super important that you have balanced meals. 1/3 of your calories should be coming from protein, 1/3 from fat, and 1/3 from carbohydrates. If you're overweight with insulin resistance, you really need to limit those carbohydrates. It's according to how active you are. I'm going to talk about how many carbohydrates in a little more detail later. But the first part of your balanced insulin resistant lunch is protein. And the way you figure out how much protein your body needs when you have insulin resistance is you really need to calculate your lean body mass. And you can do that with online calculators. And you basically get 1/2 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. That's a minimum per day. And you want to split up the amount of protein you're getting into thirds for the day. So lunch gets 1/3 of the protein, breakfast gets 1/3, and dinner gets 1/3. For instance, if you have 120 pounds of lean body mass, you're going to need at least 60 grams of protein, which means 20 grams for lunch, 20 grams of protein for dinner, and 20 grams for breakfast. Now, 20 grams of protein in animal flesh, like fish, poultry, or meat, would fit into the palm of your hands, about the size of a deck of cards. It's about a few ounces. If you have less lean body mass, you're going to need less. If you have more lean body mass, you're going to need more protein. Protein foods include animal products: beef, chicken, fish, poultry, eggs, and dairy like cheeses and yogurt. Protein can also be found in plant products like nuts, seeds, legumes, and beans. Now, the second part of your balanced insulin-resistant lunch is fat. You need about half as much fat as your grams of protein. And fat is both saturated and unsaturated fats. Saturated fats are saturated with hydrogens. So anytime you're eating meat, chicken or fish, butter, cheeses, any dairy products or eggs, those are all saturated fats. And there are other saturated fats coming from plants like coconut oil and palm oil. And for the health of your cells, you need 1/3 of your fats coming from those saturated fats and 2/3 of your fats coming from unsaturated plant fats like olive oil, nuts and seeds, avocados. If you're cooking at very high temperatures, use avocado oil because it does not denature like olive oil, but otherwise, I like to use olive oil for sautéing and roasting because studies have proven that olive oil preserves the nutrients in foods better than any other oil. Now, the third part of your balanced insulin-resistant lunch are your carbohydrates. And remember, 1/3 of your lunch is coming from carbohydrates that are low glycemic index. Those carbohydrates are those that do not turn into sugar quickly. They're very, very slowly processed into sugar. They have lots of fiber and a low sugar content. They're usually found in whole grains, vegetables, and beans. They're all low glycemic index carbs. Now, if you have a weight issue, I would avoid eating any grains or any starches at this point and focus on lots of vegetables for lunch. For your carbohydrates, you can use denser vegetables like winter squashes, beets, yams, and other root vegetables. These carb-rich veggies are so nutrient-dense that they're worth the extra calories. Fruits can also count as carbs at this point in the daytime. And of course, if you're not overweight, but you do have insulin resistance, then you can actually have whole grains like quinoa, spelt, bulgur, brown rice, wild rice. All whole grains are very, very rich in fiber that slows down how fast you absorb sugar from the starch. And then, of course, lots and lots of colorful vegetables. You want to be sure you're getting lots of leafy greens, and I prefer if you cook your greens. I know it's really easy to eat a salad at lunch, and that's acceptable, but cooked greens are actually much more nutritious as the cooking process breaks down cellulose, so you're able to absorb the nutrients from them better. So cook your greens. In fact, all vegetables should be cooked. Now, as long as the majority of vegetables are cooked so you will get the most nutrition, 1 serving of raw vegetables during the day is fine. Fortunately, any kind of vegetables count. You're going for color like colorful peppers and greens and cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Now let's stop a moment and discuss exactly how many carbs you need per meal. Now that depends on how active you are and how close you are to your ideal body weight. If you're sedentary and obese, 15 grams of carbs is all you need. You don't count vegetables, only the starchy ones. And if you're a lean athlete, you need a lot more, like 90 grams of carbs per meal. But most active overweight people with insulin resistance need about 30 to 45 grams of carbs per meal. You eat less carbs and you'll lose weight faster. So what would a good insulin-resistant lunch look like? Well, a salad is okay, but remember, I want you to throw in some vegetables like roasted vegetables so you get some of that cooked vegetables and more nutrition. And some protein like chicken or fish, throw on some nuts and seeds, maybe some feta. Dress it with olive oil and vinegar. My favorite's balsamic. Now don't worry, it does taste sweet, but you're not going to be eating that much vinegar to increase your blood sugar, so enjoy. But what if you're eating out? That can be the hard part. How do you eat well and eat out? Well, luckily, most restaurants now offer lower carb versions like bowls instead of burritos with legumes, those are beans, and lots of greens. Throw on some protein and dress it with some other vegetables. Bowls are super popular now. You can do a little bit of whole grain in your bowl if you're not overweight. If you've been watching my insulin resistant videos for breakfast, you know that's when you get your starchy carbs if you're overweight. You're going to limit the grains and starchy vegetables at lunch and dinner if you're overweight. Now, a word of caution, do not drink your calories. Sodas, pops, fruit juice, cocktails, sweetened teas are going to be turned into sugar quickly in your body, and you're going to store it as fat right around your middle. And this is going to drive your insulin resistance up higher and higher, forcing your hemoglobin A1C off the charts. So you really only should be drinking non-caloric drinks like water and teas, either herbal, black or green. Even coffee would be okay. Seltzer waters, club soda, mineral waters. Now, sometimes after lunch you may crave sugar. I see this a lot in my patients who have insulin resistance. And we start them on their diet, and they're really good for breakfast and they're really good for dinner. And they eat a healthy lunch, but after lunch they crave sugar. They just can hardly stand it. So here's the deal. When you're insulin resistant, you're used to your cortisol levels being really high. Cortisol is the hormone that your adrenals make in order to release stored sugar, which will release every single time you eat. But eventually, if your cortisol has been running high, because you've been under stress and your insulin resistance, your adrenals can get a little tired, so they may not release enough cortisol, especially after lunch, when daytime cortisol levels tend to be lower naturally. You need cortisol to be released when you eat, so it tells your body to release a little bit of sugar that'll satisfy your brain, and specifically your hypothalamus, because your hypothalamus, your brain, the rest of your body, they're going to have to wait a while until you digest all the food that you just ate to get energy. And that could take a few hours. But without the release of stored sugar, your brain is getting shorted, so your hypothalamus will tell you to eat some sugar. So in the beginning of following an insulin-resistant diet, I often tell my patients to eat a little bit of fruit after lunch, and that will satisfy that sugar craving. Now, if fruit is not enough, I created a cocoa energy ball recipe which uses raw cocoa, coconut as a binder, and nut butter with just a little bit of honey to sweeten the bitterness of that raw cocoa. Mix it all together, roll them into balls smaller than a golf ball size, and refrigerate them. One small cocoa energy ball after lunch usually stops the sugar craving. Plus, the dark chocolate raises your serotonin levels and makes you feel a lot happier. And that's one of my rescue measures. And if you really want the full recipe, it's in our hormone reboot training. I'll put the link below. Now, check out my next video for more health tips.